There was a half-eaten cake on the floor, a wine glass shattered in the sink, and someone's left heel stuck in the ceiling fan. No one spoke. Not even Tess, who never stopped talking. Not even Alba, whose idea this all was. Not even Callie, the bride, who was curled up in a blanket that didn't belong to her, staring blankly at the hotel's muted television. It was 7:03 a.m., and I was watching it all through the security footage I wasn't supposed to have access to. You ever stare at something so long that your brain starts filling in sounds you can't actually hear? That's what this was. Just black and white video of 8 women unraveling in real time. Laughing too loud. Dancing barefoot on expensive furniture. One of them, I think it was Verna, pouring tequila directly into a ring light. At first, it looked like fun. Then it didn't. You can see the exact moment it shifts. You can see the way Callie turns to whisper something to Alba, and how Alba freezes like she heard something she wasn't supposed to. You can see the way Tess keeps glancing at her phone and then stops checking it altogether. You can see Verna pacing, then disappearing, then reappearing with someone who wasn't invited. Someone I recognized. And that's when I stopped breathing. I wasn't supposed to see this. I had logged into the hotel's back-end system using credentials I definitely shouldn't still have from my IT contracting days. I told myself it was just curiosity, wetting nerves, or whatever. That I just wanted to make sure everything was fine. That Callie was safe. But that wasn't the real reason. You don't check camera feeds at 6 in the morning out of love. You do it out of suspicion. You do it when you already know. I watched the grainy footage of the penthouse, the party winding down, then winding up again after midnight. The door opened twice after the official guest list had arrived. The second time it opened, that's when everything started to rot. Someone had brought a stranger. Only he wasn't a stranger. Not to me. And not to Callie either. The audio file. Now, I'll admit something I've never told anyone. I went through Callie's iPad once. Months ago. It was a stupid moment of weakness, and I told myself I would never do it again. But at 7:10 a.m., as I watched my soon-to-be wife kiss someone I'd never let into our house, I remembered that her iPad syncs automatically to her iCloud. So I checked. There was a voice recording uploaded 6 hours earlier. Titled, LOL Dare. Face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy. It was 3 minutes and 12 seconds long. The first minute was just screaming, giggling, background music, something about a game. Then someone shouting, truth or dare, final round. Then silence. Then Callie's voice. She sounded out of breath. And what she said, I don't think I'll ever forget it. Not even if I wanted to. I must have replayed the audio 5, maybe 6 times. Not because I didn't hear it the first time, but because a part of me genuinely thought I could hear it differently if I just stayed calm enough. You ever do that? Replay something traumatic and hope, desperately, that your brain somehow got it wrong the first time? I kept thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe the laugh wasn't hers. Maybe it was a setup. A joke. Girls being stupid. But no, it was Callie's voice. Her exact cadence. That low, mischievous laugh she did when she was trying to sound innocent. The same one she used on me when she scratched my car and blamed a mysterious red SUV. The second minute of the audio was quiet. Not in a peaceful way. Quiet in the way a closed bathroom door is quiet when someone's crying behind it. You could hear muffled whispers. Someone said no way. Someone else said he'll find out. Then Callie's voice again. It's just a dare. It doesn't mean anything. And then the laughter returned, but it was sharp now. Edgy. Drunken. Unhinged. I paused it right before the last 30 seconds. I couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, I went into the kitchen, poured myself orange juice, then poured whiskey into the orange juice like I was some kind of broken brunch dad. I sat at the table in silence, staring at the cracked screen of her iPad, wondering how many lies could fit in 192 seconds of audio. When I finally pressed play again, it was just in time to hear the sound of the door opening. Loud. Then footsteps. Then someone, probably Tess, shrieking, "Oh my God, I can't believe he actually came." And then Callie. He said he'd do anything if I asked nicely. Someone giggled. Someone else said, "Are we recording this?" And then, clear as day, and I swear this next line is carved into my spine now, Callie whispered, "If Merrill finds out, I'll just cry. He always forgives me." I dropped the iPad. Literally dropped it. It clattered to the floor and bounced under the table. Cooper, our dog, came running in like he thought it was a game. He nudged the tablet with his nose, tail wagging. Meanwhile, I sat there, motionless, staring at the wall while my entire sense of self caved in on itself like a burned-down building. She knew. She knew I'd find out. She had counted on it. And she had planned her defense before the crime even began. I didn't know who he was yet, but I had a suspicion. A strong one. There was a guy named Flynn. Yes, Flynn, like some overconfident book villain, who worked with her at the ad agency. I'd seen their texts once, during that same iPad incident I swore I'd never repeat. He'd sent her a picture of his dinner. She replied with a flame emoji. Harmless, right? But here's the thing. Callie's a vegetarian, and the plate was a giant ribeye. That's when I knew she wasn't admiring the food. So when I heard that voice in the background of the recording, low, gravelly, half-drunk, I knew exactly who it was. Flynn, the same guy I once gave a ride home from a company barbecue. The same guy who laughed at my dad jokes and asked for my chili recipe. The same guy who texted her, "You look dangerous today," and got away with it because Callie swore he was gay. Spoiler, he's not. I had questions. 100 of them. But only one really mattered at that moment. Was she still with him? The sun was up now. The wedding was less than 36 hours away. People were flying in. My mom had ordered embroidered napkins with our initials. And somewhere, in a penthouse hotel room I had partially paid for, the woman I was supposed to marry was waking up from a night I wasn't invited to, next to a man who wasn't me. At 8:41 a.m., I did something irreversible. I left our wedding group chat. I know how dumb that sounds compared to everything else, but trust me, it mattered. That chat was buzzing with messages. Her cousin Iris had just posted a selfie from the Denver airport with the caption, "Eek wedding vibes." Smiling face with hard eyes, and Callie's uncle sent another joke about how he was still hungover from his last marriage. Everyone was excited. Everyone was invested. Except me. I was sitting in the same hoodie I'd worn the night before, drinking warm orange juice whiskey from a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Fiancé," trying to figure out if I should cancel a wedding or an entire life. The group chat was chaos, but I noticed something subtle that no one else would have. Callie hadn't typed a word in it since 6:19 p.m. the night before. The last thing she posted was a selfie with her bridal squad on the balcony, captioned, "Let's make some memories, clinking glasses, ring woman dancing," and the comments from everyone, her mom, my aunt, random friends from college, were full of heart emojis and "You deserve this," and "Gorgeous queen." And I stared at that word, deserve, until it lost all meaning. I muted the group for an hour. Then I left. No explanation. No dramatic exit. Just a quiet, red notification that said, "Merrill left the conversation." Not even 30 seconds later, I got a text from Callie's sister, Taryn. "Taryn, Merrill, what are you doing? Taryn, please don't blow this up before we talk. Taryn, I'm begging you." That was the word she used. Begging. It hit me hard. Not because I felt bad for her, but because I realized she was the only one who even knew something was off. The rest of the world still thought we were in fairy tale mode. Taryn, though, she'd seen it. She'd been at the party. She hadn't sent me the audio or the videos, but she knew I'd seen something, and now she was in damage control mode. I didn't answer her. Not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because I had no idea what to say. "Hey, sorry your sister blew up our engagement like a bottle of warm champagne. Can I get that hotel key card back?" I turned off my phone, shoved it under a pillow, and started pacing. I couldn't sit still. The house felt wrong now, like everything in it had been touched by a lie. The toaster we picked out together, a lie. The vintage map above the couch we argued about for weeks, a lie. Even the scent of the laundry detergent smelled like betrayal. The worst part? The wedding playlist was still playing softly from the Bluetooth speaker in the bathroom. I walked in and shut it off mid-chorus, just as Electric Love hit the line about, "Baby, you're like lightning in a bottle." That was her favorite song. I needed to do something. Anything. I opened my laptop, loaded the hotel's website, and started digging. I knew the hotel Callie had booked for her bachelorette, the Elysian, because I helped pay for it. A luxury downtown suite with skyline views and spa-grade everything. I scrolled until I found the floor plan of the penthouse. 2 entrances. One main, one private. And then I saw it. A tiny tab labeled Business Travelers. Buried inside was a virtual concierge option, including a login portal for corporate guests to monitor their event reservations, with access to room logs. I remembered that Callie had used my company discount to book the room, which meant my name was on the reservation. I stared at the login box for a long time. My hands were shaking. I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I typed in my credentials, cracked the verification with my backup email, and seconds later, I was staring at a digital log of key card entries and exits. Every door open, every room code used, every time someone came and went, all recorded. And there it was. 3:22 a.m. Room 5403. Private entrance. Accessed. User. Guest issued key hashtag B24 Flynn H. Followed by 3:58 a.m. Room 5403. Main entrance. Accessed. User. Callie M. She left and came back. After he did. And she used the front door. I'm not sure what broke in me at that exact moment, but I suddenly started laughing. Not the good kind. That silent, ugly laugh where your face gets hot and you can't tell if you're about to cry or pass out. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, laughing like someone had told a joke I didn't understand. Cooper sat beside me, confused. He licked my knee, and all I could think was, what kind of person walks back through the front door like nothing happened? I didn't plan to text Elise. It just happened. Of all the bridesmaids, she was the one I never really clicked with. Not for any dramatic reason. She was just cold. She always felt more like an event planner than a friend. Always watching, rarely smiling. When Callie first introduced us, Elise didn't even shake my hand. Just nodded and said, "You're taller than I expected." That was it. I always assumed she just didn't like me. And maybe she didn't. But she also wasn't fake, which now, weirdly, made her the most trustworthy person in Callie's entire orbit. At 10:27 a.m., I opened our barely used message thread and typed something I couldn't believe I was sending. Me, be honest with me. You were there last night. Did anything happen? 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then they vanished. Then came back. Then vanished again. I stared at the screen like it was a bomb. She finally replied. Elise, depends on what you mean by happen. That was such an Elise answer it made me clench my jaw. Me. I mean, did Callie sleep with Flynn? Or even just leave with him? Or anything that would make me cancel a $27,000 wedding? The dots returned. Stayed longer this time. Elise. Not sure if I'm the one who should say this. Elise, but yes. Elise, she left with him. On purpose. We tried to stop her. Taryn literally cried. Elise, Callie said she wanted one last mistake. I didn't reply. Elise, for what it's worth, not everyone was okay with it. Alba left early. Tess looked sick. I almost called you Merrill, but I knew it wasn't my place. Not her place. That line stuck in my teeth. Like what would have to happen for it to be her place? Arson? Murder? Would she stand over a burning church and say, I'm not the priest? I didn't know what made me angrier, what Callie did, or how easily the people around her wrapped it in excuses and silence. Me, what did she say when she came back? The reply was instant. Elise, she was cold. Drank water. Took off her shoes. Said, nobody tells Merrill. He gets emotional. Then she fell asleep in the robe Flynn brought her. That last part made my vision blur. I blinked hard twice. Stared at the sentence like maybe if I looked long enough, it would disappear. But it didn't. It sat there, mocking me. I closed the chat. This was the part one hadn't prepared for. Not the betrayal, but the normalcy of it all. The casualness. The ease with which everyone just slotted themselves back into the evening. As if a quick infidelity was as routine as brushing your teeth. That's what made me spiral. Not just the act, but the atmosphere. You know when you realize you're not actually important in your own relationship? That you've become more of a symbol than a person? That's how it felt. Like I was this placeholder, the safe harbor, while the real, messy, fun parts of her life happened without me. And then came the real kicker. At 11:02 a.m., while I was still trying to decide whether to punch a wall or vomit, I got a Venmo request. From Callie. $74. 18. Caption. For my half of the bridesmaid robes, red heart, THX babe. I stared at it like it was a joke. Like maybe she fat-fingered the send button and meant to click something else. But no. She'd just casually decided to invoice me. On the morning after she slept with another man. For half the cost of personalized satin robes. I rejected the request. Then I blocked her on Venmo. Something shifted in me then. I'm not going to pretend it was some noble moment of clarity. It wasn't. It was bitter, small, petty even. But it was mine. The first thing I did that morning that felt like it had any weight. Still, I didn't call off the wedding. Not yet. Instead, I opened a new browser tab, logged into my airline rewards account, and checked flight availability to Montana. Why Montana? I don't know. It just felt far away. Cold. Empty. Perfect. I didn't book anything. But I kept the tab open. And I left the house for the first time in 16 hours. Where did I go? To the one place no self-respecting, betrayed, broken groom should ever go. The venue. I told the girl at the front desk that my name was Martin, and that I was the brother of the groom. Not a close brother, a distant one. Like, didn't talk until last Christmas distant. I made up a story about flying in early to check the layout because I used to be in lighting design and wanted to surprise the happy couple with a custom installation. I don't know why I picked lighting design. It just spilled out. She smiled like she didn't care either way and handed me a temporary vendor badge without asking for ID. Just like that. No questions. No red flags. I don't know what that says about wedding security, but if I had been an arsonist instead of a heartbroken IT guy with trust issues, things could have gone very differently. The venue was stunning. I had to admit that, and that made it worse. Every corner was dusted with intention. The velvet chairs, the reclaimed wood beams, the handmade terrariums with our initials etched into the glass. The florist had already arrived and was arguing with someone on the phone about eucalyptus. There was a faint echo of piano music being tested in the ceremony room. And in the hallway leading to the bridal suite, someone had propped up a whiteboard that read, "This is your weekend, Mrs. Callie M," with little hearts drawn in the corners. I wanted to throw it out the window, but instead, I walked past it. Quietly. Badge flipped forward. Eyes down. Heart pounding. There were voices coming from the suite. At first, I froze. I hadn't actually planned what I'd do if someone was inside. But then I recognized one of the voices, Taryn. Her tone was sharp. Panicked. The kind of tone you use when you're trying to get someone sober enough to function. "Just drink the coffee, Cal. Please. People are arriving today. You have to get it together." Then came Callie's voice. Distant. Slurred, maybe. "I'm fine. Everyone's being dramatic. You slept for 4 hours and cried in your sleep. I cry when I'm happy, too." There was a pause. Then Taryn, softer now. "You made a mistake. But you can still come clean. If you tell him before the ceremony, maybe." Callie cut her off with a noise I couldn't quite place. A mix between a laugh and a groan. Then, loud and clear, "He won't leave me. He never does. Merrill forgave me when I forgot his birthday 3 years in a row. He forgave me when I lied about that hotel in Austin. He forgave me for the engagement ring thing. And he'll forgive this, too. It's what he does." I backed away like the words physically struck me. I turned a corner and ducked into one of the side rooms. I think it was supposed to be the groom's suite, and shut the door behind me with my heart hammering against my ribs like a panicked bird. There were mirrors everywhere. I caught a glimpse of myself and almost didn't recognize the man staring back. I looked hollow, pale, sweaty. My hair was a mess. My hoodie was stretched at the collar. And worst of all, I looked exactly like what she said I was. Someone who always forgives. Someone so conflict avoidant that people mistake it for weakness. Someone whose empathy had become a leash. And she was holding the other end. The room was filled with things meant for me. Tux bags hanging neatly in a row, a table of whiskey and cigars I didn't ask for, printed timelines and groomsmen gifts. I walked up to the mirror again, hands clenched, trying to remember what it felt like to be proud of this day. And then I saw it. A folded envelope resting on the dresser. It said Merrill in her handwriting. For a second, I actually smiled. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it was an apology. Maybe I thought there'd be a key to the truth inside. Something that explained everything. Something that made me feel stupid for doubting her. Instead, it was a letter. And the first line read, "If you're reading this, I guess I didn't have the courage to say it to your face." I sat down. My knees couldn't hold me anymore. The letter continued. "I know I've always had a problem with impulse. I know that's not new. But it's different now. This isn't about you not being enough. It's about me never knowing when enough is enough. I thought marriage would fix that. I really did. But last night, I panicked. I needed to feel chaos again. Just once more. Flynn didn't mean anything. You need to believe that. He was just convenient. Familiar. Wrong. But safe in that wrongness. You're going to hate me. And I probably deserve it. But part of me still hopes you'll come to the altar. That you'll choose the future we planned. Even if I fumbled the last page of the script. Because we were still good. Weren't we? Please tell me we were still good. She didn't sign it. No, love, Callie. No, I'm sorry. Just that. A gamble. A Hail Mary. An emotional landmine dressed as vulnerability. I crumpled the letter and uncrumpled it again, holding it like it might explode. And then the door opened. It wasn't Taryn. It wasn't the coordinator. It wasn't even a staff member. It was Flynn, in a white button-down, untucked, eyes puffy, and holding a plastic bag with 2 iced coffees. He looked at me. I looked at him. Neither of us said a word. And for the first time in my life, I honestly considered punching another human being. Flynn didn't move. Neither did I. For a solid 5 seconds, we just stood there, trapped in this weird pocket of time where everything felt like a movie scene someone else was directing. He still had the iced coffees in his hand, sweating through the plastic bag, condensation dripping onto the carpet like tiny alarms. His mouth opened just slightly, like he wanted to say my name, but couldn't decide on the tone. I waited for an apology, or at least some half-hearted, "This isn't what it looks like," but he didn't give me anything. Just that slow, wide-eyed, deer-in-headlights look like he'd walked into a room and found a bomb with his name written on it. So I stood up. He instinctively took a step back, like I was going to swing. Maybe part of me wanted to. But no, that would have made things easy for him. It would have made me the one who lost control. And I wasn't going to let him have that. I looked him in the eye and said, "Sit down." To my surprise, he did. He put the coffee on the table like we were about to have a polite brunch and sat in the armchair across from me like this was some HR mediation instead of a ticking emotional time bomb. "I guess you know," he said finally, his voice quiet, like he was talking to a priest. "About last night." I said, "Or the emotional manipulation. Or the fact that you've been playing the long game with someone else's fiancée like a creep with a spreadsheet." He flinched at that. "Good. Look," he said, rubbing his hands on his thighs. "I didn't plan for this to happen. I didn't pursue her." I laughed, not a happy laugh. More like the kind you let out when you hear a punchline to a joke you were actually the butt of. "You didn't pursue her? You just showed up to a bachelorette party uninvited and climbed into her bed because you thought the mini quiches were that good?" His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. I leaned in just slightly, locking eyes. "You knew what this weekend was. You knew she was getting married. You've known since the engagement party. I remember you were there. You gave us a wine decanter and wrote, 'To a lifetime of loyalty.' Was that irony? Or just bad taste?" He sighed and looked down, shaking his head like I was being unreasonable, like I was making his life hard. And that's when it hit me. He didn't even feel guilty. Not really. Not in any meaningful way. He was ashamed he got caught, but not sorry for what he did. And definitely not sorry for who he did it with. So I didn't hit him. I told him something that scared him more than a black eye. I said, "I'm not calling off the wedding." His head snapped up. "I'm going to let her get in the dress. Walk the aisle. Smile in front of 200 people. And then, right when the officiant asks if anyone has a reason this couple shouldn't be married, I'm going to say your name." He blinked, confused, unsure if I was bluffing. "You think last night was chaos?" I continued. "Imagine what it'll feel like when her grandparents find out. When her little cousins ask what infidelity means. When your name gets printed on every cancellation email. When people whisper it at the office. Flynn, the guy who couldn't keep it in his pants. She thinks I forgive her too easily. She's about to find out what it feels like to be humiliated publicly. And you." I leaned even closer. "You're going to sit in the front row and clap." His face turned pale. "I don't think you're that kind of guy," he said, but it sounded more like a wish than a statement. "I wasn't," I said. "But neither was she. And now? I think we've all changed." He opened his mouth again, but I stood up, grabbed the coffees he brought, and dumped both into the trash. The sound of the ice hitting the plastic was louder than I expected. I walked past him toward the door. Just before I left, I said one more thing. "If you come anywhere near the ceremony tomorrow, I'll make sure you leave with fewer teeth than you walked in with. But no worries, I'll be smiling the whole time." I didn't wait for a response. I left him sitting there, still as a statue, staring at the ruined coffees like they were evidence in a crime he couldn't explain. Outside, the air smelled like wildflowers and money. Guests were beginning to arrive. I saw someone from Callie's side unpacking a cello. A kid running across the lawn with a drone. Chairs were being lined up in rows. The venue was turning into a storybook, polished, curated, fake. And yet, I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt something worse. I felt calm. calm in that cold, surgical way people describe before doing something irreversible. I didn't want revenge. I wanted control. And for the first time in 5 years, I had it. The thing about weddings is that they operate like machines. Once they start, they don't stop. People show up, vendors follow their timeline scripts, and there's this assumption that the groom and bride are exactly where they're supposed to be, emotionally and physically. No one checks. No one asks. They just smile, pass out mimosas, and wait for music cues. And that worked in my favor. Because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. Not mentally. Not emotionally. Not even logistically. By 2:15 p.m. the day of the wedding, I had reactivated the group chat. Yep, the one I'd left dramatically 24 hours earlier. I posted one thing. Wedding's still on. See you all soon. M. The reaction was instant. Dozens of heart emojis, champagne gifts, inside jokes from friends and cousins and old roommates. Someone from Callie's side wrote, "Thank God." Had me sweating for a sec. Another replied with, "She better be worth it, dude." I almost laughed. Because if they knew what I knew, if they'd seen what I'd seen, her walking barefoot through the hotel lobby in another man's shirt, or that smug letter folded in half without a hint of regret, they wouldn't be raising glasses. They'd be backing away from the cake table. By 3:40 p.m., the venue was a fairy tale. Rows of white chairs, soft music floating over the garden lawn, people in pastel suits and uncomfortable shoes trying not to sweat. The sun was that perfect kind of warm where everything glows a little too beautifully for what's actually happening. I stood near the altar while the officiant, some hired guy named Trevor who looked like a part-time magician, was doing mic checks and asking if I'd like to personalize the vows. I told him no. The words I had in mind wouldn't make it past his script anyway. At 4:01 p.m., the bridal suite opened. And there she was, Callie, hair pinned in waves, dress fitted like a dream, holding a bouquet of dried roses and whispering something to Taryn, who nodded with the face of someone who'd aged 10 years in a weekend. Everyone turned to look at her. Phones rose into the air. The collective gasp rippled like a wave, even though none of them knew they were watching a woman walk into a marriage she'd already set on fire. And yet, there she was, playing her part. Her smile was convincing. Except for one thing. Her eyes didn't look at me. They looked past me. For a moment, I wondered if she was searching the crowd. Maybe for Flynn. Maybe for a way out. But then her gaze snapped into focus and landed on me. And just for a flicker of a second, she looked afraid. Not like she feared me. No, like she feared that I knew everything. And that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't going to let her win. I smiled. That slow, tight, rehearsed smile that says, "We're fine," but tastes like gasoline. People clapped. Some stood. The music began. And the wedding, my wedding, started. She walked the aisle with her father. Her hands trembled only slightly. I watched her eyes dart from person to person, calculating how many of them knew, wondering who would break first. But no one did, because no one knew, except me. When she reached me, I leaned in and whispered, "You look beautiful. That must be why Flynn brought you coffee." She froze. I felt it, the way her spine stiffened under the dress. But then the cameras flashed, and the moment passed, and the photographer captured what would later be called a candid moment of intimacy. She smiled like a hostage. We stood under the floral arch while Trevor began his speech about love and loyalty and choosing each other every day. He mispronounced my last name. Twice. Callie didn't correct him. Her hand in mine was ice cold. And then, during the readings, something unexpected happened. Alba, yes, that Alba, who I hadn't heard from in months, got up to do her assigned reading. Some generic poem about forever. She walked to the podium slowly, hands shaking slightly. Callie was watching her with a tight jaw. I was watching her like a detective watches a witness who might crack. And then Alba looked up from the paper and paused. Too long. Callie blinked twice. Alba said, "I'm sorry. I can't do this." And she walked away. Just like that. A few scattered laughs from the crowd. Some thought it was a joke. A modern twist. But I saw Callie's face drain of color, and suddenly everything clicked. There was more. This wasn't just about Flynn. And Callie knew it was coming. I stood perfectly still while someone else, maybe Tess, I don't remember, rushed to the podium to recover the reading. Alba was already halfway down the garden path. Her phone was in her hand. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Callie squeezed my hand too tightly. I didn't flinch. I whispered, "How many lies are we standing on right now, Callie?" Her mouth didn't move, but her eyes were screaming. And I swear I saw it in her then. Not guilt, not fear, but calculation. The silent mental math of how far she could stretch this illusion before it finally broke in public. But the most dangerous part? She still thought I might not break it. She still thought I loved her too much to ruin the image. And that was her last mistake. The moment came. You know the one. The classic line. The one every wedding hinges on. The officiant looked at us with that ceremonial nod, script in hand, and said, "If anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." I didn't speak. Not yet. The silence stretched. You could feel it in the air, a kind of collective breath hold from the audience, like even people who'd been checking their phones during the vows were now wide-eyed and alert. Callie's grip on my hand tightened again. Her eyes didn't blink. Her mouth twitched ever so slightly, like she was daring me. But I didn't speak, because I didn't need to. Alba already had. And in that small moment, something broke in Callie. Not dramatically. There was no collapse, no gasping, no storming off in tears. Just the slow, dawning realization that she wasn't in control anymore. That the web she'd spun was unraveling on its own. And all I had to do was let it. The officiant, visibly nervous now, continued. His voice had lost its smoothness. I remember thinking he looked like a man trying to finish a speech in front of a firing squad. He turned to me. "Merrill, do you take this woman?" "No," I said, loud enough that even the birds stopped chirping. Callie flinched. "I don't," I said again. "Not today. Not like this." There were gasps. A phone hit the ground somewhere behind us. Her dad stood up in slow motion, his mouth already opening with a sharp, "What the hell is going on?" But I raised my hand without turning and said, "Please, just let me finish." I turned to Callie. "You had a choice," I said, "and you made it. Not just last night, not just with Flynn, but every time you looked me in the eye and lied. Every time you measured my love and used it as cover. I would have forgiven a mistake. I would have forgiven weakness. But I won't forgive how calculated you were." She didn't cry. That almost disappointed me. But then I realized she didn't need to. This wasn't her loss. Not yet. Because in her world, losing me was still reversible. She thought she could walk down this aisle, smile pretty, and I'd cave. Again. But this time I didn't. I turned to the guests, most of whom looked like they'd just witnessed a live crime. I gave a small, awkward bow. Yes, a bow, because I am that guy who apologizes while his life is burning down, and said, "I'm sorry for the mess. I know many of you flew a long way to be here. I truly appreciate it. But I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me, who doesn't even like me enough to be honest. So, the reception is still on. There's food. There's music. Please stay. Celebrate something else. Celebrate truth. Celebrate freedom. Or hell, celebrate the open bar." Somewhere in the back, someone actually clapped. One clap, then two, then a ripple. It wasn't thunderous, but it was enough to keep me from falling apart. Taryn looked like she might burst into tears. Flynn was nowhere in sight, probably halfway back to whatever self-help podcast he crawled out of. "Callie?" She just stood there. And then she said the quietest thing I've ever heard her say. "You're really not going through with it." I looked her in the eyes for the last time. "I am going through with it. Just not with you." And then I left. Not running. Not storming. Just walking. Calm. Grounded. Like a man who had finally remembered how to carry himself. The funny thing is, the reception still happened. Not in the same tone, of course. It turned into more of a celebration of liberation, as someone drunkenly put it. People danced, ate, laughed nervously. Alba apologized to me, not for what she did, but for not doing it sooner. Taryn hugged me for 5 full minutes, and then punched me in the arm for not telling her first. And me? I danced. For the first time in years, I danced without pretending to like the song. By midnight, I was sitting barefoot in the grass with a half-finished piece of wedding cake and Cooper curled at my feet. I had nothing. No wife, no photos to frame, no honeymoon to pack for. But I was free. Really free. The next morning, I checked into a small mountain cabin with no Wi-Fi and no cell service. I stayed there for 4 days. I read books. Hiked. Let the world exist without me for a bit. Let the silence stitch me back together. And when I came back, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a man who saved himself just in time.